imagine for a second that a time traveler lands on Earth, say, I don't know, 1,000 years from now.
Like a futuristic anthropologist, basically.
Right, exactly. A futuristic anthropologist who spends decades just sifting through the ruins and the digital records of our current civilization.
Digging through all our stuff.
Yeah. And this traveler studies our sprawling megacities, our wildly complex global economies, all the medical breakthroughs, and of course, our devastating world wars.
The whole spectrum of human history.
The whole thing. And after absorbing literally everything we've ever built and destroyed, this visitor asks one single, really penetrating question. Out of everything humanity has ever discovered, what was your absolute greatest discovery?
It's a brilliant thought experiment from the source text we're analyzing in our deep dive today. Because, the immediate impulse for most of us is to point to our external triumphs.
Yes, for sure. We'd want to show off like the steam engine or the splitting of the atom.
Or the eradication of smallpox, the silicon chip, AI. We tend to define discovery entirely as conquering the world outside of ourselves.
But the text argues that pointing to a rocket ship or a smartphone completely misses the mark. It poses this counter question: who built those things? Like, was it gold that engineered the Roman aqueducts?
Right. Yeah.
Was it silicon that wrote the code for the internet? No. Every single civilization, every scientific breakthrough, every piece of art, and every law ever drafted originated in the exact same place.
Inside the human mind.
Exactly. The core thesis we are diving into today is that humanity's greatest discovery isn't any external technology. It's the very instrument that made the technology possible in the first place.
Which brings us to this massive, honestly almost comical disparity in how we allocate our resources as a species. We spend trillions of dollars mapping the ocean floor, right?
Yeah, sending rovers to Mars.
Exactly, and building particle accelerators to understand the physical universe. We pour boundless energy into understanding the external world, yet we vastly neglect the internal universe.
It's wild when you frame it like that.
It is. We are desperately trying to decode the cosmos before we even understand the biological machine doing the decoding.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the text refers to this as an epistemological blind spot, which, sounds like heavy philosophical jargon, but if I'm reading this right, it's essentially asking, how can we trust our perception of reality if we don't understand our own perception tools?
That is a perfect translation of the concept.
It's like wearing a pair of red-tinted glasses from birth. If you don't know you have them on, you don't just think you see red, you fundamentally believe the entire universe is red.
Spot on. The brain is the lens through which we measure physics, write history, judge each other. If that lens is distorted by ancient biological biases or survival instincts or unexamined blind spots, well, then our entire map of reality is distorted.
And yet we rarely study the lens itself.
We really don't. The source material uses a very grounded analogy here. It asks you to imagine buying the world's most advanced, multi-billion-dollar supercomputer. But you completely ignore the instruction manual.
You just throw it out.
Right, you throw it away. And as a result, you only use a tiny fraction of its capabilities, and when it inevitably crashes or runs a corrupted program, you have absolutely no idea how to troubleshoot it.
I want to build on that supercomputer idea because, the modern equivalent would be handing someone a brand new smartphone without ever explaining what it is.
Right. They have no context.
None. Because they don't know it can access the entire sum of human knowledge or navigate them across the globe via satellite. They just use it as, like, a paperweight. Or maybe a flashlight if they press the right button by accident.
Very expensive paperweight.
Exactly. And what strikes me about this text is that we are literally born with an organ containing 86 billion neurons, capable of imagining futures that don't even exist, and yet we are sent out into the world with zero user training.
Zero.
We go to school for decades to learn how to operate spreadsheets, drive cars, use heavy machinery, but we are never taught how to operate the machine that makes every single decision in our lives.
What's fascinating here is that the instruction manual actually does exist.
Right.
We aren't living in the dark ages of neuroscience anymore. In the last few decades, science has largely decoded the basic operating system of the human brain.
The manual is written.
It is written. The tragedy is just that this manual hasn't made it into the mainstream curriculum of human life. We treat our own minds as these mysterious, unpredictable black boxes rather than what they are, biological systems with specific physical mechanisms.
So let's open that manual, because the text dedicates a significant amount of time to outlining exactly what neuroscience has figured out that society just keeps ignoring.
And it starts with neuroplasticity.
Yes. which for a long time, the assumption was that by the time you reached adulthood, your brain was basically wet clay that had dried and set in the kiln,
Right,
right?
that was the prevailing dogma. You were who you were.
You're just stuck with yourself.
Exactly. But neuroplasticity completely upended that.
Huh.
It is the biological mechanism by which the brain continually rewires itself based on your experiences.
And this isn't just a metaphor, it happens physically, right?
Physically, yes.
Yeah.
Down at the synaptic level. When you learn a new skill, or even just repeat a specific thought pattern, neurons fire together. And when they fire together repeatedly,
They wired together.
exactly, the chemical and physical connection between them actually strengthens.
It's like walking through a dense field of tall grass.
Yeah.
The first time you walk across it, it's difficult, you're pushing through the weeds. But if you walk that exact same path every single day, you eventually trample the grass down and create a clear dirt road.
Right.
Walking that path becomes frictionless.
That is exactly the right visual. And the thing is, this applies to everything. If you practice a language, you build a road. But importantly, if you practice anxiety,
Oh.
yeah, if you repeatedly focus on catastrophic outcomes, you are also physically thickening the neural pathways for fear.
Yeah.
You are making it biologically easier for your brain to become anxious in the future.
So the brain doesn't care if the habit is good or bad.
It doesn't judge at all. It just optimizes for whatever you do most often.
That immediately makes me think about what drives us to walk down those paths in the first place. Which brings us to the next chapter of this manual, the dopamine system.
Ah, yes.
Dopamine. It's become a bit of a buzzword lately, usually associated with pleasure. People talk about getting a dopamine hit from a piece of chocolate or a like on social media.
Right.
But the source text makes a crucial distinction about how this chemical actually works, doesn't it?
It does, and this is a vital distinction to understand. Dopamine is not actually the chemical of pleasure or satisfaction.
It's not.
No. It is the chemical of anticipation and motivation.
Yeah.
It is the evolutionary engine of seeking.
Seeking.
Yes. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, dopamine is what compelled our ancestors to leave the cave and forage for berries in a potentially dangerous forest. When you see a cue for a potential reward, dopamine spikes, creating this narrowing of focus and an intense craving.
It wants you to move.
Exactly. It is designed to propel you forward.
So it's the carrot dangling on the stick. It's not the feeling of eating the carrot, but the relentless drive that makes you chase it in the first place.
Precisely.
That completely reframes modern behavioral issues for me. Like if I'm endlessly scrolling on my phone at 2:00 a.m., I'm not actually enjoying it. I'm not experiencing pleasure.
You're probably feeling pretty miserable, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My brain is just locked in this dopamine-seeking loop, hunting for the next novel piece of information, exactly the same way an ancestor hunted for scarce calories.
You are deploying ancient biological hardware in a modern environment that has been artificially engineered to exploit it.
It's a mismatch.
A massive one. Social media algorithms, fast food, video games, they are all essentially hacking this dopamine pathway, hijacking your motivation system to serve their own ends.
Which introduces a darker element of this manual, honestly. Because if dopamine is the accelerator pushing us toward things, what about the brakes? Or I guess more accurately, the alarm system.
The amygdala.
Yes, the text dives really deep into the amygdala.
The amygdala is our ancient threat detection center. It's this small, almond-shaped cluster deep in the brain, and its entire job is to just scan the environment for danger.
It's just constantly on the lookout.
Constantly. And when it detects a threat, its response is immediate, physical, and completely overriding. It doesn't ask for permission.
I love the metaphor the text uses for this. It describes the amygdala as a highly sensitive smoke detector.
It's a great comparison.
Because a smoke detector cannot tell the difference between a house actively burning to the ground and, a piece of toast you left in the toaster too long. Its only job is to scream and wake you up.
And the physiological cascade that follows that scream is profound. When the amygdala fires, it dumps adrenaline and cortisol into your bloodstream.
Fight or flight.
Exactly. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing gets shallow, and crucially, this is the most important part, it actually restricts blood flow to your prefrontal cortex.
The prefrontal cortex being the part of the brain right behind the forehead, which the text identifies as the center for logic, long-term planning, and executive control. Like it's the CEO of the brain.
Yes, the CEO. So in a moment of perceived threat, the amygdala literally shuts down the CEO.
Wow.
And from an evolutionary standpoint, this makes perfect sense. If a tiger jumps out of the bushes, you don't want your prefrontal cortex carefully analyzing the tiger's stripe pattern.
Right. Or debating the ethical implications of running away.
Exactly. You need instant, unthinking, reactive action. The amygdala bypasses logic to keep you alive.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because I have to push back here, or at least play devil's advocate for a moment on behalf of anyone listening.
Okay, let's hear it.
The text pairs all of this hardwired biological machinery, the dopamine, the amygdala, with a concept called the blank slate theory. It argues that we are fundamentally shaped by our environment. But how can we be a blank slate if we come pre-installed with a highly aggressive smoke detector and a relentless craving engine? Like, those aren't blank slates, that's preloaded software.
That is a very sharp critique, and it requires us to clarify how the source material is actually defining the blank slate. Because it does not mean we are born without biological imperatives.
Okay.
As you said, the hardware, the amygdala, the dopamine system is absolutely pre-installed. What is blank, however, is the specific target of those systems.
The target. Okay, explain that.
Well, a child is born with a dopamine system that demands rewards, right? But no child is genetically hardwired to want a corner office, a luxury car, or a specific brand of sneakers.
Ah, I see.
Those specific desires are cultural software installed by the environment onto the biological hardware.
I see the distinction. So the hardware demands we fear being ostracized by our tribe to survive, but the environment dictates what gets us ostracized.
Exactly.
Whether it's failing a math test, wearing the wrong clothes, or holding the wrong political opinion.
Right. The brain is a neutral learning machine that absorbs the values, fears, and prejudices of its surroundings to ensure survival within that specific context.
Okay, but look, everything we've discussed so far, neuroplasticity, dopamine loops, amygdala hijacks, it feels very personal.
It is very introspective.
Yeah, it's incredibly useful for self-improvement or personal therapy. But I can easily imagine a skeptic listening to this and thinking, okay, understanding my smoke detector is great for my personal anxiety, but we live in a world on fire.
Right. The macro problems.
Exactly. We have crushing systemic poverty. We have brutal, escalating global conflicts. We are facing catastrophic climate change. Isn't sitting around studying our own brain chemistry basically just glorified navel-gazing while Rome burns?
It is the most frequent and forceful critique of introspective philosophy, the demand for immediate external action. The idea that fixing the world requires pulling geopolitical levers, not, examining synapses.
Stop meditating and go pass a law, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the counter-argument presented in the source material is, honestly, breathtaking. It totally upends that assumption. The text argues that the crises we are facing, poverty, war, environmental collapse, they're not natural disasters.
They are not external events that happen to us. They are systems designed by us.
Yes.
Like, systemic poverty isn't a meteor that struck the Earth from deep space.
Right. It didn't just fall from the sky.
It is an economic structure designed by human brains, incentivized by human desires, and maintained by human assumptions about value and worth. It is a manifestation of resource hoarding.
Which, if we trace it back, is often driven by an unmanaged amygdala screaming that there isn't enough to go around.
Combined with a dopamine system that constantly wants more than it needs.
Exactly. When you scale that up, the text argues you get our current global reality. Let's look at the phenomenon of war. War is often analyzed entirely through the lens of geopolitics, borders, and resources. But the source material asks us to look at the biological root. War is the direct, macro-level result of the brain's ancient survival circuits, operating in a modern world.
It's the amygdala run amok on a geopolitical scale.
Precisely. If you strip away the uniforms and the national flags, what is actually happening? You have a perceived threat, often an ego threat or a tribal dispute.
Right.
The amygdala of a nation's leadership triggers a fear response. Because the amygdala shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the center for empathy and long-term consequences, the leadership resorts to primitive reactive aggression.
So the hardware is exactly the same as two ancient tribes fighting over a river.
Yes, but because we never learned to manage that hardware, we are now acting out those same tribal impulses with nuclear weapons.
The stakes are infinitely higher, but the biological mechanism is identical. That is terrifying.
It really is.
And the text applies this exact same framing to climate change, which might be the most devastating example. The text frames environmental degradation almost entirely as a dopamine problem.
It is the ultimate biological mismatch. Our dopamine system evolved to prioritize immediate, short-term rewards for survival. If you found a honey tree Thousands of years ago, you consumed all the sugar immediately because it might not be there tomorrow.
Right, your brain didn't evolve to calculate the 30-year ecological consequence of eating that honey.
Exactly. So when we are faced with something like climate change, our prefrontal cortex, the CEO, is looking at the data and screaming, if we keep emitting these gases, the coastlines will flood in 50 years.
But the dopamine system is looking at cheap energy, instant overnight shipping, fast fashion, and saying, yes, but this feels highly rewarding right now.
And because the dopamine system is older and often louder, the short-term reward consistently wins over the long-term survival plan.
This is why the source material concludes that fixing climate change isn't fundamentally about building better solar panels.
No, we already have incredible technology.
The bottleneck isn't engineering, it is psychology. It is the human inability to delay immediate gratification for a distant, abstract collective good.
Exactly.
So, what does this all mean? If we follow this logic to its absolute conclusion, are we saying that our greatest global crises are not actually economic, political, or technological problems? Are they literally just scaled up versions of individual neurological flaws?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is the exact paradigm shift the text is demanding. The source material asserts that society does not actually exist as an independent entity.
What do you mean?
There's no floating blob of society out there. Society is nothing more than billions of individual human minds interacting in a shared space.
It is entirely a macro reflection of our micromental states.
Exactly. If the individual minds making up the network are confused, reactive, and driven by unexamined fear, the society as a whole will inevitably be confused, reactive, and fearful.
That makes total sense.
A society built by amygdala-driven minds will build institutions that reflect that fear. Massive militaries, punitive justice systems, hostile borders. Conversely, if individual minds become self-aware and learn to empower the prefrontal cortex over the amygdala.
The society they build will naturally reflect that wisdom.
Exactly.
That is a staggering way to view activism. It argues that you cannot actually fix the output of a machine if the machine itself is fundamentally misaligned. If the human mind is the factory producing war and environmental collapse, you can't just keep cleaning up the toxic runoff outside the factory.
You have to walk inside and fix the assembly line.
Yes. Understanding the brain isn't a luxury for philosophers. It is the absolute prerequisite for solving every other earthly problem.
And this brings us back to the profound hope embedded in the blank slate concept and neuroplasticity. We are not doomed by our biology.
Right, because of the plasticity.
Exactly. The baby born today does not have a genetic imperative to pollute the ocean or stockpile weapons. Those behaviors are the result of software installed by a frightened, short-term thinking culture. Because the brain is plastic, it can be consciously rewired.
We have the ability to rewrite our own manual. We don't just have to passively read it.
We can edit the code,
Wow.
but, and this is the kicker, we cannot edit a code we refuse to look at.
Wow.
The future of human flourishing doesn't begin with discovering a new exoplanet to colonize, because if we go to Mars with the exact same unmanaged amygdalas, we will just build the exact same fearful societies there.
The true frontier is discovering the mechanics of ourselves.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to turn this directly over to you, the listener. Take a moment today to run a quick audit on your own mental machinery. When you feel that sudden spike of anger at a colleague's email, or that overwhelming urge to buy something you don't need, or the anxiety that keeps you awake at night, how much of that is you making a conscious choice?
And how much of it is just your unread manual running on complete autopilot?
Is it just your ancient smoke detector going off, or your dopamine system chasing a phantom carrot?
It is the most important self-audit you can perform. And to leave you with one final, perhaps slightly haunting thought that builds on everything we've unpacked today.
Okay.
We have spent this entire time discussing how our biological hardware is mismatched with our current technology, leading to crises like climate change and global conflict. But look at the immediate horizon. We are currently standing on the brink of merging our biological minds with incredibly advanced artificial intelligence.
We are building the ultimate external supercomputer.
Precisely. We are preparing to plug our messy, emotionally driven, unread internal supercomputer into a flawless, wildly powerful external one.
Oh, wow.
The profound question this raises is, will the sheer power of AI finally force humanity to turn inward, read our own instruction manual, and master our psychology so we can wield this tool safely? Or will we blindly plug our ancient unmanaged fears and tribal survival circuits directly into the most powerful technology ever created, simply amplifying our flaws to a scale we can't even comprehend?
That is both a terrifying and thrilling place to leave it. It really does come back to the beginning. We have spent millennia looking through the telescope, obsessed with conquering the external universe. But if we want to survive the next century, it might finally be time to turn the telescope around and conquer the observer. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.